This is part of the Making Connections podcast from the Worcestershire Local Enterprise Partnership. I'm Gary Woodman, the Chief Executive, and today I've got Adam and Elizabeth with me from Harrison Clark Rickerbys. Elizabeth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello there. I'm Elizabeth Beatty, and I'm a partner in the dispute resolution team at our Worcester office. And I'll hand over to Adam at this point so he can introduce himself as well.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Gary, for having us. Again, another partner, Harrison Clark Rickerbys. I specialise in insurance and financial service disputes.
So we're here because obviously during these strange times, in a sense, a lot of businesses and clients are coming to you with some sort of core questions, and therefore we were kind of putting these on the podcast and in the newsletter of both Harrison Clark Rickerbys and the Local Enterprise Partnership, just to kind of help business at this time. So the first question that we've sort of got is, if I've got cover for what I think is my sort of business interruption insurance, will my sort of policy pay out, or what do I need in that insurance at this time? Yeah.
The simple answer is that the first thing to do is to check the policy to see what's covered. You know, simply having business interruption insurance doesn't mean that your losses will be covered arising from COVID-19. You know, the devil is in the detail when it comes to insurance policies. So the first thing to do is to have a look at it to establish whether you have got the right kind of cover. For the majority of business interruption insurance policies, there must be an element of property damage that's occurred, and which generally protects against fire and water damage. Obviously, COVID-19 does not damage property, so a standard business interruption insurance policy won't necessarily provide any cover. But as I say, it's not sort of put your head in the hands time and give up. Look at the policy, discuss it with your broker. If necessary, you can discuss it with a lawyer. And also to look at, in addition, whether there are any additional inclusions or exclusions which might be of use to you in that policy to provide some kind of, to cover some of your losses. The general consensus is that basic business interruption insurance isn't enough. So, as I say, it's always worth thinking about what other cover you may have.
It is fairly stark in some respects. You know, the business interruption does generally just cover property damage, as Beth mentioned, and by and large, COVID isn't affecting property from a physical damage perspective. If you read all the stories, it is quite doom and gloom. You know, the insurance companies are putting out there that they're not making any payments, and then very recently, we're looking at over £1 billion that potentially might be paid out. So there are some policies that have the right cover in place, and it's certainly worthwhile spending the time with your broker if you have one, in going through line by line that policy, because quite often they can be ambiguous and may not be that clear, and any confusion can be helpfully interpreted in the customer's favour.
And if I do want to make a sort of claim, what are those sort of other elements of that cover that I should be looking at in terms of that may help my business if it's not a business interruption insurance?
Yeah, the most sort of usual or obvious starting point is whether you've got some notifiable or contagious disease add-on. This is an additional peril that you can include under the business interruption. And the advantage here, it isn't there to affect physical damage to your property. So if your business operation is interrupted because of COVID-19, you've got this add-on, you may qualify to have your losses covered by the insurance policy. The downside is it often affects just a limited number of diseases, or it excludes a number of diseases. So again, you need to carefully look at the terms and conditions of that policy to see whether that additional peril is covered. But sometimes it will cover. If you don't have that aspect, other additional perils that you can cover is loss of attraction or event cancellation insurance. And sometimes those will step in, you know, for specific festivals, for example, sporting events, they may provide cover from your insurance company. So again, don't just check your standard policy, but have a look at any additional schedules. Quite often these may be buried in, because they more often than not haven't been used in the past, and carefully check line by line what cover you may have in place. One other area that we're looking at as well is some policies have cover where a local competent authority has made a decision to close businesses. For example, also we've got lockdown by the government. Then again, that aspect of coverage may step in as a potential way of seeking compensation from your insurer.
Yeah, and certainly in a previous one of these, and I think it was in one of the HCR newsletters, it was looking at the kind of force majeure piece in contracts and trying to work through that. But it was really about a conversation between the kind of client and the customer. And I think probably going back to, it probably is worth that sort of a bit, Elizabeth, where going talking to your broker or talking to your lawyer about the kind of cover that you've got and what you can then do. Because I suppose if you think you can claim, will the insurer then kind of definitely pay out?
Unfortunately not. Even if you do have the relevant cover in place, there are still other hurdles you have to overcome. You have to prove the losses are directly attributable to COVID-19, and that in itself isn't that straightforward. And in addition, if the public are told not to come to you because you run a hotel or a pub or you're a sports club, in any event, you may have those losses and they still may not be covered. So unfortunately, it's never that simple, Gary, as much as we'd like it to be.
No, but as I say, it's always worth looking at these additional clauses. Somebody contacted me a couple of weeks ago. They run tea rooms effectively, and they said, I won't be covered by business interruption insurance. So let's have a look at this. And they got notifiable disease cover unbeknown to them. And in fact, the claim's being processed and been accepted by the insurer. But they'd all but given up, effectively. They're going to have to just shut the business down, and that was the end of that. But now, in fact, once they're able to open again, they'll be able, they think they can survive. So, as I say, it's not straightforward. You have to prove the losses are directly caused by COVID-19. But if you can satisfy that and you've got the right cover, it can make the difference, make or break for a business in the present climate.
Yeah, I mean, we're revising businesses from every aspect. We're looking at hotels, pub chains, schools, obviously all been impacted one degree or another. Professional sports clubs in particular. Huge losses are being sustained by these businesses, and whilst the government support is helpful, it's not covering a lot of their losses, and the question is whether they'll be able to recover from these issues. So if there's a chance of being able to recover under the insurance policy, then it's certainly worthwhile looking at. Again, don't just listen to the headlines being produced by the insurers that have you believe that they're not going to pay out. Certain insurers have already been making the news for the wrong reasons. The government is leaning on the insurance companies. Obviously, social media and webinars such as this one is all going to help. BBC are producing articles as well. We think those goalposts may actually move in the future.
So if you've kind of already contacted your insurance company and got a no, actually it might be going back and just worth checking just to make sure it is a no, or equally there might be some other kind of claims or clauses that actually you can find, and therefore it is worth another kind of conversation back to your broker or your lawyer.
Absolutely. Go back if you're not, if you don't understand, if the insurer, if you're being fobbed off or you're not entirely sure of the extent of the cover that you have, as I say, speak to the broker or you can speak to a solicitor about it, just for them to look at that detail to see whether in fact you are being fobbed off, or in fact you have got cover that you didn't realise that you've got, which could be of use to you at this time.
Okay. And then with lots of people working from home, certainly we've done one of these, making connections with Nicola Whiting on the sort of cyber security piece, and there are lots of things that companies can do. But with people working from home, obviously they're accessing systems from home. Can you obtain cover just to protect the company against cyber attacks or data breaches or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's worthwhile checking again what cyber insurance you have in place, what data recovery insurance you may have available. If not, double check. As you say, we're all reliant on individuals' home security. Best one in the world, that probably isn't as good as your employer's security. So again, double check the position as the employer, as the business owner, and have a look at speaking to your broker to top up that insurance.
Great. I mean, those are really helpful tips. And certainly, Elizabeth, if you want to add anything in.
Well, I think in terms of, in terms of getting cyber insurance, cyber crime insurance for all the issues that arise from that, it's also a matter of perhaps a bit of housekeeping as well for each business that's trying to work remotely. Make sure that you've got policies for home working, and ensure that people change their passwords regularly, only use secure connections, and just monitor it to check the firewall and security of electronic devices to try and protect yourselves as best you can, because clearly that's an important factor. If you've got insurance but you're not yourself doing anything to try and protect yourself, as it were, and you're not making sure there are safeguards in place to protect the business from cyber attacks, then that might be a reason why the insurance, even though you've got to pay for insurance cover, that the insurer might refuse to pay out. So it's really important to just ensure that you're doing all that you can in terms of housekeeping and policies, and making sure staff are trained properly on the do's and don'ts of being secure when working from home.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And certainly we've got some handy guides on Worcestershire Business Central that a business can go in, have a look at. There are things like IASME or Be Cyber Secure. You can just look back at the programme and just kind of pick up those tips. And certainly I would also encourage businesses at this time maybe just to refresh their staff or their teams just with that kind of little bit of cyber security training that you can do online, you can find online. And it just means that you've kind of taken that risk into account.
Yeah, it's not going to do any harm, and unfortunately, we're all more vulnerable. And given the current environment, fraudsters, organised crime, etc., is on the increase because there's vulnerabilities there.
Yeah, no, good. I mean, certainly from my side, that was great. And so, although nice and short and sweet, but it was really gave the businesses out there, but just those kind of few tips around the sort of business interruption insurance and just some other bits that I think to be thinking about at this current time. Thank you both.
Pleasure. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.